Is there a difference between men and women?
The Olympics this year.
Hit me up on the LinkedIn.
I got you. I'll text you because there's a secret I want. Last year I met Meb.
Yep.
You know what I'm gonna ask?
Yeah. There's always a possibility.
I like the possibilities.
All right.
We're not gonna talk about it.
The Olympics, I can remember having conversations with people during the last Olympics.
UPenn swimmer Leah Thomas becoming the first ever transgender athlete to win a Division I national championship.
Was pushed over the first 350 meters. Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
I have said from the beginning, and I stand with it, that I don't want biological boys to compete against women and girls in sports. It's just not fair. Now, obviously, over the last 6 months especially, because of Leah Thomas at the University of Pennsylvania, she had been on the boys' team just a few years earlier. I do not blame her. She played within the rules. But she dominated.
About the danger of the transgender movement.
It's the dramatic end to a competitive and controversial weekend for Mac Beggs. The 17-year-old Dallas area high school student won the title of champion in the girls' state wrestling competition Saturday. A mix of cheers and boos directed at the wrestler as he fell to his knees, appearing to soak in the win. Many in the audience feel Beggs has an unfair advantage on the road to victory. Beggs is a transgender athlete, born a girl, transitioning to become a boy. He takes testosterone injections to make that transition happen. Many believe that provides the young wrestler with an added competitive edge. His strength and agility are hard to miss on the mat.
And how we were losing our minds and how women's sports were going to eventually disappear.
Male has just become the first transgender person to win a world title in cycling.
First transgender weightlifter winning her maiden international event as a woman.
A biological male winning a gold medal in a women's event now seems a matter of when, not if.
If they're classified as females, they should be able to compete against females. What do I actually think?
Yeah.
Women should compete against women, and transgenders should compete against transgenders.
Okay.
More and more biological men who identify as women are absolutely dominating women's sports.
I got first called transphobic because of the Fallon Fox thing, because that fighter that was beating the shit out of biological women without telling them that she was a man for 30 plus years.
Cracked one of their skulls within like 30 seconds.
Bragging about it. And I was like, that's crazy. And people were like, you're out of line. You're a bigot. I'm like, what are you saying?
We saw earlier a male who looked backwards, saw how far ahead he was than the females, and then intentionally slowed down to almost a jog to make his complete dominance a little less obvious. And we saw Leah Thomas wait at the finish line for about 40 seconds before the next swimmer finished. There is clearly something very disturbing happening to women's sports.
The NCAA official looks at me and says, the trophy goes to Leah.
What?
We'll eventually mail you yours. And so I kind of look at him and I quickly question him and I'm like, okay, I understand there's one trophy, don't account for ties, but what's your thought process on giving it to Leah? Why are you so adamant? And he said, well, for photo purposes, Leah has to have it.
Because the entire culture is essentially now bowing down to gender ideology, to the point of allowing biological men to dominate women's sports, true women are being robbed of athletic accomplishments. And of course, we do not at all see the opposite happening, which demonstrates clearly that there is, in fact, a significant difference between men and women.
Because you would have biological males identifying as females competing in women's sports. It's not going to happen the other way around. And all of a sudden, women will disappear.
In a Netflix show, a female bodybuilder challenged a man to a wrestling match. Watch what happens.
I'm strong enough to lift up and carry most men. I'll make him regret this.
He's out on a stroll.
What's he doing?
The man's hands are in his pockets and he seems absolutely unconcerned.
With his hands in his pockets. He was half sitting on me, and I couldn't break free. He wasn't even that heavy, but I couldn't get up.
Keep in mind that the woman is a bodybuilder, and the man doesn't even seem like he is an exceptionally large man.
Oh, that's a fighting skill.
That's chest!
Of course, some women are stronger than some men, but it's simply an undeniable fact that there are significant differences between biological men and biological women. And to allow biological men to compete against biological women in sports is inherently unfair to the women.
Today, I want to address the news that the World Surf League has officially made the rule that male-bodied individuals known as transgender athletes can officially compete in the women's division. And I think it's really hard to imagine the future of women's surfing will be like in 15 to 20 years down the road if we move forward allowing this major change. But we are seeing glimpses of male-bodied dominance in women's sports like running, swimming, and others.
It seems to be only a matter of time before the very concept of women's sports becomes completely meaningless, as more and more biological men dominate every aspect of women's sports.
And at the Olympics 4 years ago, I guess it was 5 years ago, the Olympics 5 years ago now, people were saying, that's ridiculous. You and I both know that would never happen. You're just being an alarmist. And a number of transgender athletes competed at the Olympics this year.
It's become one of the thorniest debates in society today. Should trans women athletes be allowed to compete in women's sport? We've got the Olympics coming. You've got a New Zealand weightlifter who lifted as a male in competition, who's now smashing records.
Well, a Minnesota judge called Patrick Diamond has just ruled that USA powerlifting must allow men to compete against women. And as you'd expect, powerlifting groups are now warning this will effectively end competitive powerlifting for women. We thought we would speak to a competitive female powerlifter. April Hutchinson represents Team Canada. She joins us tonight. April, thank you. And I'm sorry to laugh. This is actually a very sad story, and I'm just wondering how you feel about it.
Well, thank you for having me, Tucker. How are we feeling? The women of powerlifting are, we're outraged, we're angry, we're hurt, we're offended. We're basically every emotion except for happy.
We have talked a little bit about some of the changes taking place for the Tokyo Games, but perhaps the biggest change this time around, for the first time ever, a transgender athlete will compete.
You know, our country is in big trouble when even a show like South Park recognizes the insanity that is happening.
Now, this is the first year that a trans woman is in the competition. How do you feel about that?
Amazing.
Have you actually ever met Heather Swanson?
I can't tell you how free I feel now that I've started identifying as a woman. Now I'm ready to smash the other girls.
It's simply rebellion against God to eliminate, ignore, and destroy the differences between men and women that God designed. The culture's full embrace and support of transgender athletes is not an act of love or of tolerance, but rather demeans and belittles actual women whose accomplishments are being stripped away from them. We are living in a culture that is full of insanity and full of hatred towards God, a culture that desperately needs to be transformed by the gospel. Without this gospel, there is only judgment and destruction that awaits.
But it can be too late for every nation. Acts 14, God says he allows all the nations to go their own way. How do you know when a nation passes the point where salvation is possible for a people? Well, Romans 1, we've talked about it. Romans 1, wrath. God gave them over to sexual immorality. God gave them over to homosexuality. God gave them over to a reprobate mind, a non-functioning mind. So when you see a nation deep in sexual sin, pervasively affirming of homosexuality, and the insanity of a reprobate mind where they make laws to criminalize righteousness and to legalize gross evil, you know that nation's under judgment.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos and want to help support this channel, the best way to do it is to just watch these videos until the end and click the subscribe button. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement.